Yo, what's up, boys? Back with another video, and today I'm going to be predicting Texas 2026 football schedule. Let's get it. All right, it's a cupcake game. There's really no competition in this. All right, so this is a game where I really feel like it can be a toss-up, but at the same time, I also feel like Texas finally beats Ohio State. You know, they lost to them the last two times they faced off in 24 and 25. 24, it was pretty competitive for most of the game. I think it was like a pick six. It made it a 14-point game. And then last season, we all know it was very defensive, boring game, 14-7. It was the early game. This is Texas's second game of the season, so it's still pretty early in the season. I think both teams will be slightly rusty still. Arch Manning, I think he'll be slightly improved, but not, I don't think he's going to be that crazy. But with the weapons he has, I think he has a chance to be a really good game manager this season. Julian Sam, he did lose a really good receiver. He still has Jeremiah Smith, arguably the best, or maybe not even arguably the best wide receiver in college football. The only person up there is really Malachi Toney, from what we saw last season. Who else does he have? Honestly, you know what? I honestly don't even know. I'm going to be honest. I know they got a freshman, some white dude, Brock Boyd or something. I think that's his name. But, he's a freshman. What's he really going to do? Oh, they have Brandon Ennis. That's who it is. They have Brandon Ennis. He's going to probably be the wide receiver 2 this season. They lost, what's his name? Carnell Tate, to the NFL draft. He was a very good receiver for them. Honestly, he was a top 5 receiver last season. They still got Bo Jackson at running back. They have a really good running back, or decent. I wouldn't call him elite yet. Maybe in the future, but or maybe this season he could have a breakout year. He just didn't do that good against the big teams when they'd face off against the Indianas and everything. The offensive line, I think it should be fine, honestly. Who do they play that's really gonna, give them a whole lot of trouble? It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be a good offensive line, or at least decent at worst. Defense, they lost a lot of pieces that made their defense really good. It was top 10 last season, maybe top 5 last season, actually. It was really good last season. They lost basically everybody. They kept a corner. I can't remember his name right now. Igbinosa or something. He's really good. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as good as last season, but I think Ohio State, they're Ohio State. They're not just going to be scrubs, you know what I mean? Then, they're going to, as the season goes on, it's going to get better and better. It's probably going to progress into a top 10 defense once again. So I think they should be fine there. But I just feel like, game 2, I feel like Texas should win this. All right, it's UTSA. I don't know, who they have, D1 program, but it's going to be a blowout either way. I don't know if Texas will get 50 on them, but I think it'll be somewhere around there. All right, so, Tennessee, they're coming in at number 20 this season. This will be the fourth game of the season, sorry. Tennessee, they might be 3-0. I think in my prediction I have them 2-1 at this point, but they could very well be 3-0. It's Georgia Tech, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're 2-1. If they do go 3-0 though, they're probably going to be inside the top 20. Texas, they're already 3-0. If they have a win over Ohio State, who was number 1, Texas is most likely the number 1 team. If we're looking into the future, this is probably number 1 versus number 15, somewhere around that. If we just look into the future a little bit and how the AP, ranks teams, this is probably number 1 versus number 15. But Tennessee, I just don't think they have the players that they've had, the past few years. Tennessee fans, you can say whatever you want in the comments. They don't have the quarterback they've had the past few years. Faison Brandon, freshman quarterback, cool. He was a 5-star. That's cool and all, but you saw it with Nico. What did Nico do? He didn't do that much. He got carried by a pretty good defense. I'm pretty sure that defense was like top 5 that season. They carried them the whole way to the playoffs, and Nico was the reason they lost to Arkansas. He didn't do anything against Ohio State. He looked scared, like he didn't even know what he was doing in that game. I think he's improved a lot since then, but he's at UCLA, as you all should know if you keep up with college football. But, I'm getting off track. I don't think George McIntyre or Faison Brandon, whoever starts, is going to match what Josh Heupel has produced the past few years. I think they could be decent at best, but I think this might just be one of his worst quarterback his worst quarterbacks he's had in his time at Tennessee. Nico, I'd put him down right there at the bottom. I think he's the worst quarterback they've had at Tennessee just because he was a freshman. I think this will either be right above Nico or right below Nico. Maybe even, I'm not sure. Offensive line is going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be the best in the SEC. Defensive line, I don't think the defensive line is going to be that good for Tennessee. I know y'all might say it should be, but I think the linebackers will have to blitz a lot, and it's going to kind of cover up for the defensive line. But at the same time, the corners were terrible last season. They were atrocious, okay? They lost their best corners, who weren't even that good last season. They lost them all anyway. And who are they replacing them with? People who couldn't even start over them, transfers. I don't even know any of the names. I think their corners are probably going to be one of the worst in the SEC, if not the worst. It's probably not even going to be top 10, honestly, in terms of secondary. Linebackers, I think the linebackers could be top 5 in the SEC. Running back, I think their running back, I think they have a top 10 running back in the nation. Deshaun Bishop, he's a really good running back. Receivers, I think they have a top 15 receiver core. I don't know if their quarterback can get it to them. Maybe 50-50 balls like Joey Aguilar did. But I still don't see them being as good as Joey Aguilar. Texas, Arch Manning, okay, not very accurate. Strong arm, he needs to work on his accuracy. He throws dirt balls a lot, overthrows, underthrows, you know what I mean? He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, only had 6 last season, so that's a good thing. Really good on his legs. This season, I think he's a top 3 quarterback running. I think Byron Brown is probably the number 1 quarterback running. Arch Manning might be number 2 or 3, because there's probably somebody else out there. I just can't think of it. But, I think they have a pretty good pure runner quarterback who can also be a pretty decent game manager. Receivers, Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo. That's probably a top 5 receiver core. I think Cam Coleman, he came in the first team All-American or something. He was the 3rd receiver. So, top 5 receiver core probably. Running backs, Hollywood Smothers, and some others. I think Hollywood will probably be running back 1. They have a pretty good running back room. Offensive line is the only question I have. I don't know. I think their left tackle or right tackle made the first team All-American, but, even with that, I think that same tackle is also going to be injured for the first few games of the season, I heard. So, I'm not sure. Defense is going to be good again. It was good. It's good every season for Texas, really. It's going to be good again. But I think they can handle Tennessee. Even in Neyland, I think they can handle Tennessee. I can see an upset if Arch isn't playing well, but I don't think Tennessee is that good of a team this year. All right, this game is a tricky game, Honestly, I think it's at Oklahoma, but it honestly could be a neutral site. I'm not sure. You guys can tell me in the comments if you want. I don't know if it's a neutral site or if it's at Oklahoma, but assuming it's at Oklahoma, this could be a trap game for Texas. It's a rivalry. Oklahoma's looking for revenge for Texas beating them with an injured quarterback. John Materi threw 3 interceptions last year against Texas. Arch Manning, that was probably one of his best games of the season, but at the same time, it was just being a game manager. It wasn't really like best game type. It wasn't like 23 out of 30, 360 yards type game. It was more like, I don't know, 17 out of 24, 190 yards, and a touchdown type game. Not really like crazy numbers, but just a game manager didn't make a mistake with the ball, put it in the right places every time. You know what I mean? So I think Oklahoma could be looking for revenge. They haven't scored a touchdown against them in the last, 2 or 3 matchups against Texas. I think this year will change that. I think Texas has a really good defense. I just don't see them holding Oklahoma to no touchdown once again. I feel like that's not going to happen this year. I just don't see it really. I mean, it's possible, if the offense doesn't lock in for Oklahoma. But, it's so likely that they'll get a touchdown this year, I feel like. Texas, I think they have a elite offense, but I feel like there's also still questions. Arch Manning, can he throw the football well this season? Offensive line, can it block well this season? Maybe. They had an All-American tackle for the first team All-American, but he's injured for the first game, I think, or maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't know. It's Steve Sarkisian versus what's the name? I can't remember the head coach. Brent Venables at Oklahoma. I think Sark is a better coach. So I feel like Texas can go in. They'll win it. I think it's going to be a really close defensive game for both of these teams. I don't think it'll be a blowout this year. I think it's going to be super close. I actually took Oklahoma a few months ago doing my early predictions. But now I'm leaning slightly more towards Texas. All right, so this game, I think it could be upset alert for Texas again. They got upset by them last year. Florida really completely dominated them last year. I think it was a 2-possession game up until the fourth quarter when Texas scored kind of in garbage time. I can't remember very well, but it was 29-21. Florida won by 8 points. But this time it's at Texas, I'm pretty sure, unless it's neutral site. I don't really check. I just go by whoever's on the right. Whoever's on the right is usually the home team, so that's what I go by. I just don't see a point in looking up every single location of the game. It wastes a lot of time. If you guys have a problem with it, I honestly don't care. But, I feel like Texas, revenge game for them, coming off of a very defensive win against Oklahoma. I feel like their defense is kind of is on point now. They've played, 5 teams now. They played Oklahoma, who I think might have a decent offense. I don't think it's going to be elite. I think it'll just be decent. I think it'll be a little bit better than it was last year. I'm not going to say a lot, but I think a little bit. Now they're going to be playing Florida with a shaky offensive line, new quarterback. It's a midpoint of the season, 6th game of the season, halfway through it. Florida, they lost a lot on the defensive front from last year's group that was really giving Arch a lot of trouble. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but I think Florida can bounce back. They always have a pretty good defense, so I don't really see a whole lot of change in that. Offensive line, I think it's going to be bad for Florida. Again, one of the worst in the SEC. Quarterback play, I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know. I don't think it can get much worse than DJ Lagway, at least. He threw 15 interceptions, led the nation. Transferred to Baylor. Baylor can have him, honestly. If I was a Florida fan, I wouldn't be too mad. But yeah, they have Jaden Ball, top 3 running back. Some have him as a number 1 running back. I don't think he's a number 1. I don't have him as my number 1 running back. I think a very underrated running back is Mark Fletcher. He's a very good running back, physical. He's a bruiser type running back. I think he's really good. He was kind of single-handedly carrying Miami in the playoffs last year. I think he's very underrated. I think he'll be top 5 at least. But yeah, I feel like Texas, this is a revenge game, but I think it'll be a very close, very defensive type game again. All right, this is a game where I feel like Texas is really going to show how good their offense can be against a shaky Ole Miss defense. I think Ole Miss's defense is going to be again. Last year, it was one of the worst in the SEC. It was very bad other than their pass rush. That's really the thing that carried their defense. Their corners just got lit up. It was every game. Their defense was pretty bad last year. If it wasn't for Trinidad Chambliss being such a good quarterback last year, they'd pick up at least 4 or 3 more losses, I would say. Maybe 2 more. I don't know. They don't make the playoffs without him. I know that. Their running back, Kewan Lacey, arguably the number 1 running back heading into next season. He was the cover of NCAA 27. He's a very good running back. I just don't know. It's between him, Ahmad Hardy, Mark Fletcher, Jaden Ball. Honestly, I think I might go, Kewan Lacey. For the number 1 spot just because, they're going to have to rely on him. They lost a lot of receiver talent from last year, tight end talent. They do have some dudes, but not really. They're not going to really be as good as last year, I feel like, offensively, receiver-wise, you know what I mean? Offensive line, I think Trinidad Chambliss cleaned up a lot with his legs. He was such a creator, backfield creator. He was very good with his legs, getting away from pressure. I feel like he'll do that again this year. So when the offensive line struggles, I feel like he's just going to hide it. And then Kewan Lacey, such a fast running back, explosive running back, I feel like their offense will be fine. But Texas, I feel like they have a really good offense also. I think Ole Miss will have trouble containing their offense. Also, Hollywood Smothers, Arch Manning, who I think is still overrated. Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo. That's a very good offense if you ask me. I don't know who their tight end is, honestly, but I'd probably know him if you named him. What else? Oh, their defense. Their defense is very good. It's probably going to be top 15 this year. Or it will be. I can tell you that for a fact. It'll be top 15 this year unless something just happens. Their whole defense gets injured, which is unlikely. So I feel like this will be a mini shootout. This could be, 38 to 31 type game. I don't know. 2 very explosive offenses, I feel like, with a shaky defense on both sides. I think Texas will have a good defense, but at the same time, last year, they gave up some plays last year also. So, I'm not sure. I think Trinidad Chambliss, he's really explosive, so I think he'll find a way to make it work against Texas. All right, so for Texas and Mississippi State, I have this being a really one-sided affair. I don't think Mississippi State's going to be very good this season. I think they can be like a tough team that can, give you a tough battle at times, but I don't know. They gave up like a few points to Mississippi State last season. What was it? Yeah, 38 points. It was 45 to 38. Texas barely won. But I feel like, Mississippi State, they lost all those pieces that really kept them in that game. They have new quarterback Mario Taylor, very athletic, but when he doesn't have weapons around him, what is he going to do, really? He's not about to, take Mississippi State to the promised land as one person, you know what I mean? I think Texas is, going to be a better team this season. I think they're going to blow Mississippi State out. I don't think it's going to be close or a shootout like it was last season. All right, so for this game, I think it could be a trap game for Texas at Missouri. I think it's a really underrated place to play at. You saw Alabama play at Missouri last season, and it was 27-24. I honestly don't think Texas is a much better team than 2025 Alabama. You could say that's a hot take, but honestly, I don't think so because 2025 Alabama was better than last year's Texas. I know Texas got a few more pieces. They got Cam Coleman, Hollywood Smothers. I think that improves them, but I think they might be about the same skill level as 2025 Alabama. Roster-wise, I think it might be slightly better. Quarterback, Ty Simpson was miles better than Arch Manning. Receiver room, I mean, Alabama's receivers couldn't catch very well. I'd say Jeremy Bernard carried the room, and then other than that, it was just, Lotzer Brooks, he was there, but, he wasn't putting up 100 yards a game. Isaiah Horton, he was no-show at times. I called him No-Show Zay. Ryan Williams, Butterfinger Williams. I don't know. I think it's about an even wide receiver room. Ryan Wingo had catching problems last season. Cam Coleman had catching problems in the last game of the season at Auburn. So I'm not sure. But I think Missouri will be about the same as they were last season, if not slightly better, because they kept their running back. I don't see him really getting much worse, other than the injury he got from being shot. Their quarterback, I think their quarterback is better than last season. Their quarterback last season couldn't throw a ball to save his life. He could have all the time in the world, and he just couldn't hit a wide-open guy down the field to save his life. He was terrible. All he could do was run. I think Austin Simmons is a much better passer than Bo Prabula. So I think their passing game will be much improved this season. But I think their schedule is going to be Missouri's downfall. So that's why I think Missouri is going to go around 6-6. All right. I don't know who's going to win this game, honestly. It's in Baton Rouge, That's like the toughest, arguably the toughest place to play in the nation. Death Valley is a very hard place. There's some places like Neyland, the Shoe, wait, is it called the Shoe? Horseshoe? I don't know, guys. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might sound stupid there. There's some very tough places, though. But, LSU, I think they're going to be a much improved team. I think quarterback play is going to be a pretty good bit better. I think Garrett Nussmeier was a little bit overhated, but at the same time, I think he was overrated coming into the season. Y'all all say y'all feel bad for Arch Manning. He's always predicted to be, a great quarterback, always has a lot of pressure, but nobody wants to say it about Garrett Nussmeier. I think Garrett Nussmeier was a decent quarterback at LSU. He could have had a little more help, especially along the offensive line at times. Yeah, I'm getting off track. Sam Leavitt, I think Sam Leavitt is a decent quarterback. I think he's a little overrated for this season. I think he might be injury prone. I'm not sure. I just heard that from Arizona State fans, but I don't know, honestly. He did get injured last season for a little bit. I don't know how long. I didn't really keep up with Arizona State much last season because they weren't that good, to be fair. So, but who do they got at running back? Harlem Berry and, what's his name? Oh, man, I can't remember his name. It's, like, right there. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't get it out, though. I don't know. He's better than Harlem Berry a little bit, but Harlem Berry, sophomore running back, I remember watching him in high school. I think he's decent, but I don't think he's that good yet. I think he could be good in the future. But I think for a backup, I think he's solid, I guess. Receivers, who do they have? Jace Brown, Trey Brown, Eugene Wilson, and Winnie Watkins. Those are four pretty decent receivers. I think Jace Brown is a very good receiver. I think he's going to go in the first round, maybe a little later, second round, third round, but I think he's going to be one of the earlier receivers in the NFL draft. I think he's a very good receiver. I think he puts a lot of I think he carries the receiver room, in my opinion. I think Winnie Watkins could take a step up. I think he could be like a 400, 500-yard receiver this season. I'm not sure, but I think their offense should be fine unless their offensive line can't block. If they can't, which they couldn't last season, if they can't this season, it could be a long season for LSU again. They're going to have to rely on their defense again. Their defense should be pretty decent again. They always have a pretty solid defense, I would say. So I don't think it's going to just, fall off the earth. I think it's going to be pretty good again. And if the offense can get rolling, I think LSU could be a playoff team. All right, like I said, Arkansas, I say this every video, they're going to be the worst in the SEC for the next few years. All they have is KJ Jackson and nobody else. Literally no one else. Just KJ Jackson at quarterback, who we don't even know if he's that good. We know he's athletic, but is he that good? I don't think so, honestly. I don't think he's going to carry Arkansas, especially like Taylon Green did. Taylon Green had more weapons than KJ Jackson does. It's going to be a long year for Arkansas fans. All right, so for this game, I actually picked Texas A&M first, and I kept switching it. I didn't know who to pick. I think this could be a toss-up. I think Texas A&M has a pretty good chance of winning at home. Revenge game. Their roster's starting to get older and older. I think Texas A&M is going to be a pretty good team this year. I think they're a little bit underrated, but at the same time, I'm not sure because their quarterback is turnover prone. That's my only downside with this Texas A&M team. Their quarterback, I don't trust him. I mean, last season, they could have had a much closer game with Texas if he wasn't so turnover prone. He had, 2 interceptions, and one of them came at, the 1-yard line. He was about to score. So that's just I don't know. That's my downside with him. Maybe if he improves, I think, he could take more advantage of those opportunities he had last year against Texas. He could win this game 26-23. But for the quarterback we know and we have already watched, I'm going to take Texas in this. It's a smart move. And 12-0, it's very steep for Texas, but I think this could be the year they do it. I don't want to sound like one of those casuals, 12-0, number one team. I don't think they'll finish number one, but I think 12-0 is really, likely this season. You guys might say last season they were supposed to, but they didn't. 2024, what were they, 11-1 to finish the season? They weren't far from it. And then they were top 5, in the playoffs. Almost made the national championship if they just beat Ohio State. They were down by a touchdown until he threw a pick 6. 2023, they made the playoffs. They were the 3 seed at 12-0? I don't get it. I think Texas, is a team that could actually go 12-0 this season. Same with Ohio State, Oregon, who else? Oh, Miami, who else? Georgia. Georgia, I would say Georgia's about an even team with Texas this year. Maybe even worse if you look at their roster. Who do they have at receiver? No one. I think it's more likely that Texas, is the better team than Georgia this year. Schedule-wise, I would say Georgia has the easier schedule, but Texas is a pretty good team this year, whether you like it or not. I think they're a lock for the playoffs to me.